He has the names of 20,000 people on petition. Winston-Salem police officer Ann Spain helped collect the signatures and waited outside in the hall while Parde went behind closed doors for the conference.
If you're going to sentence somebody to 50 years, they should at least get to 25 of those 50. You know, I don't care how good they are.
When the hearing was over, Parde felt his chair had spoken louder than words.
I told the truth. I didn't sugarcoat nothing.
Now, the commissioner in today's hearing took notes, and he will add those notes to the files of the inmates involved. Adrian Woodbury comes up for parole later this month, and they will consider all of the information given today in that hearing. 2 out of 3 commissioners must agree to a parole before an inmate can be released. Wanda, Cameron?
Rhonda, besides the testimony from Parde and the other officers there in Raleigh today, what are some of the other factors that the parole board might consider?
Well, they would consider good behavior, but according to the commissioner today, the inmates involved in this shooting have not had good behavior, and that would be considered in the next hearing. But that's one of the things that irritates Parde, is that they are even up for parole to begin with. And coming up at 6:30, we'll try to explain to you why this is happening the way that it is.
All right. Thanks a lot, Rhonda.
A 17-year-old accused of shooting a...
Parde, along with family and friends, gathered in Lexington here before going to Raleigh to testify in the parole hearing of the 3 men convicted of shooting him. The judge sentenced David Burris, Adrian Woodbury, and Ashley Clark to prison for shooting Parde while he and other officers answered a call at an apartment complex here in Lexington. Well, tonight on the Piedmont News Channel at 6 o'clock, we'll hear how that shooting changed Officer Parde's life. The man charged...
Police officer David Parde was shot and paralyzed.
Today, the men convicted in that shooting had a preliminary parole hearing in Raleigh. Bill DeVoe spoke with Parde as he prepared for the hearing.
As I began to turn, I fell and hit the ground.
It's every police officer's worst nightmare. For Officer David Parde of the Lexington Police Department, the nightmare came on May 5th, 1992.
I remember laying in the grass and thinking that these people really need to cut the grass, you know. I could not understand why I couldn't get up.
Parde couldn't get up because he had been shot. David Burris, Adrian Woodbury, and Ashley Clark were sentenced to prison for the shooting, which left Parde paralyzed and in a wheelchair. Of course, that was 4 years ago. A lot has happened in the life of David Parde since that period of time. Today, here at this barbecue restaurant in Lexington, he, some friends and co-workers have gathered for a very special occasion.
Me, baby.
They aren't just gathering for breakfast, they're planning for a trip to Raleigh. Today's occasion, the first preliminary parole hearing for the men who shot David. Parde says he's forgiven, but he can't forget.
February 13th of 93, when they were sentenced to 40 and 50 years, and it should not even be considered after 3 years of being in prison.
It was a loud pop, almost like a firecracker, and David fell on the ground.
Scott Bowers was there when David was shot. He'll join other voices against granting parole. And despite the fact that the shooting left his friend in a wheelchair, he says he and others draw inspiration from David's determination.
Once David got back up to speed and learned down there how to drive his van and got his house, and now he's married, so he's going right on with David.
And as this group departs for Raleigh, David is looking toward a bright future.
Like to get a degree in business, maybe a degree in law, and it's a dream. You know, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I guess everyone has dreams, you know.
In Davidson County, Bill Duvall, Fox 8, the Piedmont News Channel.
You know, I have met David Parde. He's a pretty neat man. I'm sure he'll meet his goals.
You know, it's the car. Shooting could be getting out of prison soon.
They've only been there 3 years, and already they're coming up for parole. So David Parde and his friends on the Lexington Police Force went before the state parole board today to try to keep the inmates in prison. Rhonda Hensley also made the trip to Raleigh today.
And joins us now live from Raleigh with that story. Rhonda?
Well, Cameron and Wanda, when David Parde found out that the people who shot him could be up for parole soon, he got mad and requested his own hearing. Now, back in 1992, David Parde was a Lexington police officer looking for 3 prowlers, and one of them shot him in the back. And today, he told commissioners here at the parole division that it isn't fair that they go free so soon while he spends life in a wheelchair. David Parde took 4 friends and police officers with him to the closed-door hearing. He wants to convince the parole board to keep the inmates who shot and paralyzed him when he was a Lexington police officer in prison.
Consider me eligible. When am I eligible? I want to know.
During the hearing, other friends and officers waited in the hall. Officer Charlie Pritchard came from Atlanta to show his support.
For every day that I believe that David serves in a wheelchair, this guy should have to serve behind bars.
I open my door or open the blind. I go right there, and there's David laying probably 4 feet from the edge of my stoop.
Marianne Gaster came for several reasons. Parde was shot at her back door, and her daughter is a Winston-Salem police officer.
He's risen above all the bitterness and the anger, which I know has got to be there. But he's done so well, but still, he's never going to get out of that wheelchair.
Some of the people who came not to make a point about the law, but rather to say thank you to David for being an inspiration.
He's helped me in more ways than one, and I've never even told him that he's helped me at times, you know, just his inspiration.
Now, Adrian Parde has a hearing later this month. I'm sorry, that's Adrian Woodbury has a hearing for Parde's shooting later this month, but Parde feels very confident that the people who shot him will not get out on their first try. Cameron?
Ron, a lot of our viewers have to be sitting at home saying, here's a guy involved in shooting a cop, puts him in a wheelchair, serves 3 years, and he's already up for parole. How does that happen?
Well, the criminal has to be sentenced according to the way the law was written at the time of the crime. And back in 1992, when Parde was shot, the Fair Sentencing Act was in place. And that was originally designed to be very tough on criminals. But in the 1980s, the prison population began to explode. So the General Assembly went back in and amended that law several times to alleviate the overcrowding. And that law said at the time that the inmate has to have a review every year after he served 1/8 of his sentence, minus the time off for good behavior and the time already served in jail. So that's how all of these inmates, with their time added up, can get to parole. But the fair sentencing has since been replaced with the structured sentencing.
All right, Rhonda, thanks for that report from Raleigh. That's the subject of our